If there's one thing the United States stands for in America, it's free speech, unfettered free speech. However, the last 10 to 15 years, America has become so politically correct and so afraid of free speech that we're on the verge of extinguishing free speech in this country. One of the most recent attacks on free speech is the upcoming Democratic National Convention in late August. At this time, they're building cages made of chicken wire and chain link fence in which all protesters, anyone that wants to exercise free speech at the Democratic National Convention, they have to get inside these cages. The cages will also most likely be equipped with surveillance cameras so they can peek at people and see what they're actually doing inside the cage. The thing about these cages is not only are they just cages, much like jails, but they're 2 football fields away from access to the delegates. So the delegates will never know they're even there. And if anybody wants to exercise their free speech outside of that area, they will be arrested. President Bush really has set the standard for modern times. In his Presidential Advance Manual, there's all kinds of tactics that the Secret Service and the President's Royal Guard use to do away with free speech at presidential events. One specific tactic in the President's Advance Manual are designated free speech zones that are supposedly set up by local law enforcement, which again will be out of view of the President. So what the President of the United States has created is roving no free speech zones where people can't even be heard. And what it does, it completely denies the concept of free speech as we have known it. Obviously, the creation of free speech zones and caging people who want to exercise free speech goes against the entire concept of our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and what the Revolutionary Generation stood for. If you think about it, if you take a picture of the free speech zones as they're being set up now with the cages and compare it to a picture of the concentration camps, they look very similar. In fact, the idea that the Nazis had in their concentration camps and the Soviets when they had their gulags and any regimes the world over now that still use concentration camps, and they do exist, is to take dangerous individuals and isolate them so they can be controlled. That's exactly what we're seeing at the Democratic National Convention in late August. It's the message that's feared here. It's the message that the Nazis feared. It's the message that the Soviets fear. It's the message that the Chinese fear now. It's the message that the North Koreans fear now. And that's why they curtail free speech. Barack Obama has openly claimed he's a protector of civil liberties and a defender of civil liberties. He's presiding over the Democratic National Convention. He is going to be the Democratic candidate for president. Barack Obama needs to come out and condemn these caged protest zones. A big mistake that John Kerry made back in 2004 when they had the exact same kind of protest zones was he didn't say a word about it. I still believe to today that that helped him lose his presidential bid to the United States. If he would have just stepped outside and said, take the cages down, we want to hear what these people have to say, I think it would have changed history. Barack Obama needs to do the same thing, or he will look like a hypocrite. You can't say you believe in free speech and then create semi-concentration camps so people don't have that right. We have to remember that free speech, the first word in that phrase free speech is free. That means free unless there's extraordinary circumstances to curtail it. And you're talking about terrorism, riots, or violence. That's not happening at the Democratic National Convention. There is no evidence that anybody's ever been really violent in this country anyway when they protest. So the point is that freedom is free and freedom is not slavery. And that's what's going to happen at the Democratic National Convention if these cages don't come down.